Hey, Mbana, that is vanity. You want to cook meat so that you can pass it out as feces at the end after spending so much money. That is nonsense, waste, pure waste. And Akodu is not a wasteful man. Once upon a time, in the heart of the quiet village of Amankwe, there lived a man named Akodu. His name alone caused heads to turn and mouths to murmur. He was not a chief, not a warrior, not even amongst the village head, but he was even more popular than the village head himself. Akodu was a farmer, not just any kind of farmer. His crops flourished like it was being watered by the angels themselves, and his yams were always the biggest in the land. And for that, Akodu was famous. Every planting season, villagers would trek from far and near just to get a glimpse of the magic in Akodu's farmland. And during harvest, they all couldn't stop screaming at the top of their lungs as his yams were being harvested. Akodu's yams were like babies, fat, shiny, and as long as a man's arm. Some whispered that he was in a secret covenant with the yam god Ekweji, because how else could one man grow such giant tubers every single year? Talk of his barn. His barn was a wonder on its own. It was so large that it looked like the palace courtyard. Inside, yams were arranged like royalty, standing tall in piles that reached the roof. Merchants from neighboring villages always stormed his compound to buy. Sometimes, it felt like the market had relocated to Akodu's backyard, and Akodu made lots of money from sales. Yes, Akodu was rich. He was a very rich man, but there was a huge problem. With all his riches, Akodu was the most miserly man the village had ever known. In fact, if stinginess were a competition, Akodu would win every year without rival. His wrappers were always torn on one side, his slippers had seen better days, and his shirts looked like it had fought a lion and lost the battle. His name was on everyone's lips, both the young and old. The villagers would whisper whenever he passed, to Fiawa, how can someone be this rich and still look like an ambassador of poverty? But it didn't stop there. At home, Akodu's stinginess was legendary. His wives wore wrappers that looked so old and worn out. You could even see the sunlight through them. His children looked like war survivors. Thin, barefoot, hungry, and always fighting over the smallest plate of food. The only yams they were allowed to eat were the damaged ones, those eaten by beetles or the ones that had begun to rot. The good yams, oh no, those were strictly for sale, and this always sparked quarrels in his household. I don't get it, Akodu. We work so hard all year round, only to eat rotten yams at the end of the day. Is a yam for decoration, or do those people who eat good yams have foreheads? One of his wives once asked. Akodu had replied with a very angry hiss, so loud that even the goats that were sleeping in the compound woke up as he continued sorting through his yams. Do we now talk about eating meat or fish in Akodu's house? That one was a taboo. Eh? Are you people mad? Hey! Mbana, that is vanity, he would scream. You want to cook meat so that you can pass it out as feces at the end after spending so much money? That is nonsense, waste, pure waste. And Akodu is not a wasteful man. His wives would stare at him in shock, lots of words to say. His compound was a battlefield of hunger and anger. Every day, Quarrels emanated from different huts. His wives shouting and raining abuses on Akodu at the top of their voices, and his children crying. It was as if the entire compound was always on fire, and the villagers knew not to intervene. Once they hear the noises, they will just mutter that Akodu and his family have started again. No. Soon, his wives got tired, because if he screamed down the entire village, Akodu was not ready to change, and the hunger was becoming unbearable. One by one, they packed their loads and left with their children. His compound became emptier by the day, but Akodu didn't care. If they can't endure and learn to be economical, they should go. Yam doesn't grow on trees, he would mutter as he counted his money. Despite living like a beggar, Akodu was loaded. But no one could tell what he does with his money, or even why he doesn't like to spend. What was clear, however, was that Akodu didn't spend. Not for himself, not for anyone. He would rather beg. At the village bar, when old men gathered to drink palm wine, Akodu would sit and beg someone else to buy for him. He would always begin by clearing his throat loudly and saying, "This wine smells sweet today. A good man will not drink alone." And somehow, he always found a generous soul who was always willing to buy him wine, even though they all mocked and laughed at him. But he didn't even mind. One night, the bar owner shouted, "Akodu, if you want to drink, bring out your money now. You can't be rich and still be a beggar. Atika." Everyone burst into laughter. From that day, they called him Atika, short for Atikaka, the Igbo word for someone who holds things too tightly. But Akodu didn't mind. He would rather be mocked than spend. In his mind, saving money was a greater blessing than feeding the stomach. Meanwhile, in the lively village of Ama, a beautiful village a little further from Amankwe, there lived a maiden whose beauty could stop time and make young men burst into tongues at the sight of her. Her name was Oibu. Oibu was not just beautiful, she was breathtaking. Her skin shimmered like honey in the sun. Her eyes sparkled like dew on fresh leaves, and her voice was soft and smooth like flute music in the wind. When she walked through the village square, men tripped over their own feet, and even married women would almost want to blindfold their husband so they wouldn't stare, because you can't just stop staring at this rare beauty molded by the gods themselves. Every morning, Oibu bathed in water soaked with herbs and hibiscus petals. Her mother would massage her skin with coconut oil mixed with turmeric and shea butter, then adorn her with beads that jingled like tiny bells. Her clothes were always spotless, her hair always neatly braided, and her lips always shiny like ripe cherries. Oibu's mother was a loud, proud and overly dramatic woman, known as Mama Oibu. Mama Oibu believed that her daughter's beauty was a national treasure and must be traded like gold. "My daughter is not just an ordinary maiden. She is an investment, and that is why I invest so much into maintaining this beauty," Mama Oibu would scream at the top of her voice, wagging her big arms as she boasted in the market when people complimented Oibu's beauty. And when suitors started coming to ask for Oibu's hand in marriage, she would sit in front of her hut, holding her long list, with Oibu fully adorned and sitting beside her as they quizzed the young men. It was like an interview. "What do you do for a living? How many servants do you have? How large is your barn?" The list of questions were just endless. And if you didn't meet up to her standards, she would insult you and your entire generation as she chased you out of her compound. Annual fear. Do you think this is a discount market? If you don't have money, go and marry a broom. To Mama Oibu, everything was about status and money. She had only one child, a very beautiful one at that, and she swore on her late mother's grave that she would not suffer in old age because of a poor son-in-law. She must marry a man with lands, a man with very large bands, a man who smells like money, a man with so many sources of income. And Oibu believed every word her mother said. She had grown up hearing her mother's chant-like songs. A pretty face without a rich husband is a wasted blessing, her mother would say. So Oibu waited, and as she waited, she rejected. Suitors came in plenty. The handsome son of the village blacksmith arrived with baskets of smoked fish and a goat. Mama Oibu waved him off even before he entered the compound. That goat looked so thin and hungry. The hunter, who once killed a leopard, tried his luck with a gift of leopard skin. Mama Oibu hissed and shouted, "Is my daughter going to eat or sleep on animal skin, or in a mansion?" Even the chief's cousin, who wore white agbada and drove a bicycle with a horn, was sent away. Oibu herself had learned to inspect men like they were Okirika clothes. She would squint at their sandals, sniff their colongs, glance at their wrists for signs of gold, and then sigh dramatically. Next. She wasn't wicked, no, not at all. Oibu just wanted what her mother wanted for her. A rich, powerful, well-dressed man who would pamper her like an egg and place her in a mansion where she would never touch firewood or fetch water again. Sometimes her friends teased her, "Oibu, you would soon miss all your chances and grow old, then nobody would want to marry you again." But Oibu would smile and flip her braids. "I'm too beautiful to settle for less." And so she waited. Morning turned to evening, moon after moon, and soon the men of Ama stopped trying. Her mates were already married and settled in their husbands' houses. But Oibu was still waiting for that wealthy suitor. Trust the villagers, it didn't take long for their tongues to begin whacking. They nicknamed her Oibu the Untouchable. Some said she was cursed, others said her mother had poisoned her mind, and that they would both grow old together. But none of that mattered to Oibu or Mama Oibu. "My daughter's husband is coming," she would boast, as she tied her wrapper tight. "And when he comes, the mouth that has spoken bad will speak good." One dry, dusty afternoon, the quiet streets of Ama stared as a stranger walked into the village. He wore a faded clothes that had clearly seen too many moons, a faded matching cap, and carried a small raffia bag slung over his shoulder. I'm sure that by now you should be able to guess who this man was. Of course, it was no other person than our one and only Akodu, the famous Yam King of Amankwe, though no one in Ama knew that. Akodu had come to visit his old friend Ozo, who had relocated to Ama years ago. He wasn't expecting much from the trip, just a quick chat about farmland, and maybe, if Ozo was generous enough, a free guard of palm wine. But fate had other plans. As Akodu approached the village square, he saw something that made him stop dead in his tracks. A maiden was walking towards him. She was returning from the market with a basket filled with vegetables. Her walk was like poetry, light, elegant and proud. Her clothes hugged her waist in a way that made Akodu blink twice. Her skin gleamed under the sun. Her beaded earrings danced with every step, and her face, oh, her face, looked like it had been carved by 24 happy gods. Akodu stood rooted to the ground. His jaw dropped slightly. His heart began to beat like festival drums. For a moment, he forgot who he was. As she passed by, she didn't even glance his way. She was humming softly, her hips swaying like a lazy river. Akodu turned and stared as she disappeared down the narrow path towards the inner part of the village. He couldn't help himself. "Please," he asked the young boy walking down the road, "who is that maiden that just passed?" The boy grinned, already used to that question. "That's Oibu, sir, the pride of Ama." Akodu whispered the name like it was a rare fruit. Oibu. The boy nodded with pride. "She's the most beautiful girl in this village, but forget her. She doesn't look at anyone. No. If you don't have money, don't even go near her, because she and her mother will make you regret why you were not born a spoon." Akodu blinked. The boy had walked past, but those words stuck in his head. By the time he reached Ozo's compound, his mind was far from yam farming. He barely greeted his friend before dropping onto the wooden bench. "Ozo," he said slowly, still dazed, "I saw a maiden just now, returning from the market. I have seen women, but a beauty like that I have never seen before. They say her name is Oibu." Ozo, who had been peeling kola nut, paused and looked up with raised brows. "You saw Oibu?" Akodu nodded. "Yes, so. Hey! If I had known that someone like that existed here, I would have been coming here every day, even if I have to trek the whole day. She walks like the river goddess. You know, this confidence like she owned the place, and her face glows like the morning sun. Ozo, I must marry that girl." Ozo burst into laughter. He laughed so hard that he had to hold his sides. You want to marry Oibu? You, Akodu. The same Akodu who runs from spending money like it's poison." "I am serious, Ozo." Ozo wiped his eyes. "Do you know how many men have tried? Traders with money, powerful hunters who had killed lions, sons of chiefs with fine clothes. She and her mother sent all of them away like flies." That's because she hasn't met me," Akodu said firmly. Ozo looked at him again, studying his tattered clothes and dusty sandals. "So, what exactly do you plan to offer her? Rotten yams and a leaking roof?" Akodu's eyes darkened with determination. "Ozo, I have the money. If it takes my last cowrie, I will marry her. Ozo, she will be my wife." Ozo leaned back slowly, shaking his head in disbelief. "Then, may the gods guide you. You will need all the help you can get." And from that moment on, something strange began to stir in the heart of the stingy yam farmer. For the first time in his life, Akodu was willing to spend. The news spread like Hamatan fire. Akodu, the stingy yam baron of Amankwe, was changing. Not just changing, he was transforming, and all because of a maiden. For the first time in living memory, Akodu unlocked the chest under his bamboo bed. The same chest that his last wife once accused of containing dead ancestors. Inside it were wrappers, still wrapped in the original clothes from the market. They belonged to his late mother, but he had never used them, nor would he allow any of his ex-wives to use them. He pulled them out, bright, shiny, untouched by sun or sweat. He went to the tailor, paid in full without bargaining, and asked for his best work. "I want to look like the prince of Amankwe that day." The tailor nearly fainted. Akodu, sewing a new cloth and even paying without grumbling. He bought new sandals, perfumes, and costly beads. The market women were confused. Was this Akodu, or was the world coming to an end? Because that is the only reason that can make Akodu spend. It was indeed unbelievable. But Akodu didn't stop there. He visited the palace and did the unthinkable. He begged the king, who respected him so much because of his hard work, to lend him one of his royal carriage. It took some groveling and a gift of extra large yams, but he got it. When others saw him, he nearly choked on his palm wine. "Akodu, you look like a chief returning from war with spoils." "I told you, I will marry her," Akodu said with confidence, adjusting his new red cap. And so, with fine clothes, gifts packed into baskets, 2 fat goats and a small group of proud kinsmen, Akodu set off to Ama to ask for Oibu's hand in marriage. The moment they arrived, the village erupted in whispers. "Who is that man? He looks so rich. He even has a royal carriage. Is he a king?" Mama Oibu nearly ran out of her wrapper with excitement. "Whoa! This one is different. This one has money," she screamed, even without going through her interview sessions. He had already passed with distinctions. Akodu stepped down from the carriage like a warrior prince, as some of the men he had hired to go with him as servants offloaded the gifts they had come with: bags of salt, rice, wrappers, large tubers of yams. As if that was not enough, he presented cows with flair. He smiled, he bowed, he even sprinkled cowries like a confetti, as he boasted about his never-ending wealth and his mansions. "Your daughter is in good hands. I have mansions, I have servants, and would not allow her lift a finger. She and her mother will never suffer." Mama Oibu clapped, laughed and danced. "My daughter, your husband has come. I told the villagers, and he's not just rich, he is overflowing." Oibu herself was quiet at first. She watched Akodu closely. He was older than she had expected, and he smiled like someone who didn't know how to smile. But the gifts, the gifts, they were enough to blind her doubts. "My daughter, say yes before he disappears," her mother whispered furiously behind her. And so Oibu smiled and nodded. "I accept." The date of the marriage was fixed immediately, and a few weeks later, Akodu got married to Oibu. Celebrations rang through the village of Ama. Drums beat, wine flowed. Mama Oibu danced like her waist had just been oiled. After everything, Akodu returned to Amankwe with his new bride, sitting beside him in his borrowed royal carriage, his heart pounding with pride and sorrow. He had done it, but it had cost him lots of money. The villagers whispered that finally the stingiest man in the land had found love, and that it had finally broken off his spell of stinginess. But Oibu was not ready for what she was about to discover. The journey from Ama to Amankwe was full of joy, at least for Oibu. She sat in the royal carriage dressed in her finest wrapper, fanning herself gently with her new gold-embroidered hand fan. The villagers of Ama had gathered to wave her goodbye, calling her Lolo Oibu, the queen herself. Mama Oibu had even cried tears of joy, shouting, "My daughter has entered royalty. Oh, this is the life I prayed for." Oibu smiled throughout the journey, already imagining the kind of palace her new husband must own. He said he owned the biggest mansion in his village, and with the way he sprayed money like rain and arrived with a royal carriage, his house must surely be big, beautiful and filled with servants. She felt like the luckiest girl in the world. At first, she had been skeptical about marrying Akodu. He looked really serious. But when she saw him shedding tears as they drove home and asked why he was crying, he answered that it was because he couldn't contain the love he had for her, and that his heart was about to explode because he couldn't stop thinking about her. Oibu's heart had melted and she smiled brightly. But the truth was that Akodu's eyes were clear now, and he was actually crying over all the money he had spent. It was the thought of it that was exploding his heart. The entire journey was exciting for Oibu, but her excitement began to crack the moment they arrived at Amankwe. The first sign of trouble was a silence. There was no music, no dancing, no welcoming party. Just goats bleating and chickens chasing each other. People stared at them in shock and murmured as they drove past them. Then she saw the compound. Her mouth opened slightly. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't even close to being a mansion. It was a cluster of old cracked huts surrounded by brown dry grass. One of the huts had a roof made of patched mats, and the main one had a massive hole at the top wherein water had clearly carved a path through the mud walls. This is your house? Oibu asked, forcing a smile. Akodu chuckled proudly. Yes, my strong and humble mansion, just like me. She blinked in disbelief. Where are the imported chairs, the big parlor you talked about? Akodu looked confused. You mean the stool outside? Can't you see it? Oibu burst into tears, her loud scream filling the entire compound. Ewo! My village people have finished me. It was then that she realized that Akodu had fooled her and her mother. She cried until all the tears in her eyes finished. But she couldn't go back. She and her mother had boasted so much, and the villagers would definitely mock them. That night, it rained heavily. Oibu sat on the mat in the center of the leaking hut, soaked to her waist, as water dripped directly onto her head. Her wrapper was damp, and the only blanket offered was one with holes that smelled of old yams. Akodu snored loudly in the corner, wrapped in 3 old wrappers, oblivious to her misery. She couldn't sleep. She sat up all night holding her knees, her tears mixing with the rain on her face. By morning, she was so weak and hungry. She had cried all through the previous day and had barely had anything to eat. She managed to find the kitchen, or what was left of it. It was a broken shed with 2 pots and no cover. She approached Akodu angrily. I want to cook and I need fish to make soup. There's nothing in this house. Akodu's eyes widened like she had just asked for a lion's meat. Fish kwa? Is this how your mother raised you? To be an extravagant wife? Listen, in this house, fish and meat is a taboo. You want to waste my money, eh? I have spent more than I have ever spent in my entire life to marry you. And right now, I am still recovering. So, it's either you eat yam or you remain hungry. She stepped back, startled, as hot tears poured down her face. She couldn't believe what she had gotten herself into. Look, Akodu continued, pulling out a sack of damaged yams. These are what we eat in this house. You will peel away the rotten parts, boil them and add salt if you are feeling rich. That's how we survive. Oibu couldn't believe her ears. How will you eat bad yams when you have the good ones? Akodu looked at her like she had insulted his ancestors. It's good yam. When people are paying for it. Or do you have money? My friend, don't bring bad luck into this house. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And before Oibu knew it, over a year had passed. But instead of growing into the joyful wife she had dreamed she would be, she slowly withered into someone even she could barely recognize. Gone was the shimmering skin that once glowed like palm oil under the sun. Gone were the beads that once danced on her neck. Gone was the Oibu who laughed, who flipped her braids, who turned heads with a single step. In her place was a shadow, a tired, pale version of herself, who barely spoke unless spoken to. She had once lived a life of comfort. Food was never a problem. Her skin had always been rubbed with exotic oils. Her wrappers were always new and sweet-smelling, and her hair was never undone. But in Akodu's house, luxury was a fairy tale. Her bath water was often fetched straight from the river, her soap non-existent. Akodu had once told her to use ash and salt. That was what our fathers used, and they were okay. For lotion, he offered palm oil, saying it would shine her well like a goat ready for market. The wrappers and clothes she came with had faded and torn at the edges, and food, the same beetle-beaten yam every single day, cooked dry and hard, sometimes with a sprinkle of salt and oil if she was lucky. Since her arrival in Amankwe, she hadn't tasted fish, meat, or even crayfish. The villagers soon noticed her suffering, and they didn't keep it to themselves. As she walked to the stream, she would hear the whispers float behind her. Another greedy goat has entered the trap of Akodu. She should have asked questions. What a wasted beauty. Children mocked her. Women pointed their fingers at her. And Oibu, she endured it all. Each night, she curled up in the corner of their broken hut, sobbing into her threadbare wrapper, her tears soaking the very mat she used to lie on with pride. "This is not the life I prayed for," she would whisper. Her mother came once, and what she saw broke her. She wept uncontrollably. "It's my fault," she said, clutching her daughter's freelance. "I was so blinded by wealth that didn't exist. I chased pride and gave you to a demon in wrapper. I'm sorry, Oibu. I'm so sorry." But returning to Ama was not an option. People would laugh. The same mouths that praised their rich son-in-law would mock them mercilessly. Tiny whispers had already begun flying like termites in the dry season. So Oibu swallowed her pride. "I will stay," she said to her mother, her voice low but steady. "Let them say what they want. I will stay and carry my cross." Weeks passed, and one morning, as Oibu bent to sweep the compound, a strange wave of dizziness swept over her. She dropped the broom, held her belly, and stumbled into the hut. After days of suspicion, the truth came crashing in. She was pregnant, and for the first time in a long time, she smiled, a real hopeful smile. Maybe now he will change, she thought. Maybe he will finally see me as his wife and not another mouth to feed. But Akodu did not change. If anything, he became worse as the days passed. When she told him the news, he blinked, scratched his head and said, "Okay, that's good news." And just like that, life continued as usual. Yam in the morning, yam in the afternoon, yam at night, yam with no oil, yam with tears. Many times she sat under the tree in the middle of the compound, heavily pregnant, chewing her dry yam slowly like a goat while tears rolled down her cheeks. She had had enough. One night, she sat in the corner of the hut staring at the soot-covered wall, her belly stretched before her like a mountain. The wind whistled outside, the moon hung low, and her spirits burned. She stood up and marched into the inner room, where Akodu was lying down, snoring and snoring heavily. "Akodu," she barked. He stared, blinked. "Eh? Is someone pursuing you?" "Yes. Hunger, misery, frustration, your wickedness. That's what's pursuing me." He sat up, frowning. "Why are you shouting like a mad woman in the night?" "Because I am tired, Akodu. Because I am tired of living like a slave in the house of a so-called rich man." Akodu scratched his ear. "Slave? But you're my wife." "Wife? Which kind of wife lives the way I do? Since I entered this house, I have eaten nothing but stone yams. I have worn the same clothes until it's begging to rest in peace. No oil, no soap, Not even one kobo to buy oil and rub on my cracked lips. He hissed. You like complaining. People eat yam in the prison and they are alive. Oh, so I'm now a prisoner. What kind of man are you? Look at my condition. I am pregnant, but you still let me suffer. Same thing you did to your other wives and children. The gods will punish you, Akodu. Thunder will fire you over 1,000,000 times for your stinginess. Akodo's eyes bulged. Is it me you are talking to like this? Because you are pregnant, you now have madness. Do you know how much I spent to marry you? You want to ruin me? You already ruined, she screamed. What kind of a man wears rags but calls himself rich? A whole goat lives better than us in this compound. Akodo jumped to his feet. Oibu, you better shut your mouth before you what? Beat me. With this belly, you are a big disgrace, Akodo. Your parents must be regretting ever having you as a child. You are a shame to men. Oibu cried. She was tired and ready for anything that wanted to happen. They stood face to face, the fire of fury crackling between them. Oibu panting, Akodo shaking with rage. Days passed slowly after the quarrel. Nothing good had come out of it. Oibu and her baby were still surviving as usual. One evening, Oibu was at her backyard picking up small sticks to roast a little yam. She was very hungry. As she walked around the overgrown path at the backyard, her leg dug into a spot. The soil underneath was softer. When she looked, she noticed some dried leaves sprinkled around. She raised the dried leaves carefully and saw fresh earth. She was right. Something was hiding underneath the soil. Swiftly, she rushed back to the compound and got a hoe. Then she began to dig. Oibu dug carefully, her heart beating faster with every scoop of earth she moved. At first, she thought it might be just an animal hole. The thought of eating bushmeat after a long time excited her. But as she dug deeper, the hole hit something hard. Clink, then again, clink, clink. She dropped the hole and began to use her hands, scraping until her fingers touched something smooth and round. It was a calabash. Wiping her hand on the wrapper, she leaned closer and pulled it out slowly and opened it. Her mouth dropped open. Inside were neat rolls of money, cowries, old and new notes, even shiny gold coins wrapped in clothes. Her hands trembled as she touched them. The money was packed tightly, untouched by rats or insects. Whoever buried it had done so with great care. Her breast quickened. She looked around to be sure no one was watching. Then she kept digging. One by one, she found more calabashes, all buried in a circle like some ancient shrine. When she finally sat back, her wrapper stained with dirt and her face dripping with sweat, she counted 8 full calabashes, all filled with money. She stared at them in shock. She could not breathe. She knew at once that they all belonged to Akodu. So this was it. Akodu had this kind of money and left it hidden under the ground while they lived in abject poverty, eating yam every day like a goat, sleeping under a leaking roof and wearing worn-out clothes and wrappers. This was really crazy and unbelievable. This wicked man had let her starve, had let his wife suffer, had let his children walk barefoot, all while sitting on a small kingdom of fortune buried in the backyard. Oibu's shock slowly turned to something else: anger. She was going to teach Akodu the lesson of his life. She cleaned up carefully, returned the soil back to the way it was to hide the now empty holes, and carefully she carried the calabashes one by one into the old hut where Akodu kept his yam baskets. She hid them deep behind the pile of damaged yams. The irony made her smile. That night, she served Akodu dinner as usual, boiled yams, salt, and oil. But the next day, she began her mission. She went to the market and bought fish, real fish, thick, fresh, and smelly. Then she bought meat, assorted kinds, cow meat, goat meat, chicken, everything she had once dreamt of. She also bought enough items to stock the house. The market women watched her in confusion. "Is this not Akodu's wife?" they whispered. "How did she get all this money?" Oibu heard them all, but only smiled in response. The stew and soup that cooked in the compound that afternoon reached the nose of every villager. Even the birds perched on the roof, confused by the heavenly aroma. Akodu returned from the farm sniffing like a goat. Who is cooking? Where is the smoke coming from? He saw the pot and nearly fainted. Meat in this house, fish, how come? He screamed in fear. Oibu served him gently, with soft pounded yam and soup filled with large chunks of meat and fish. "Don't worry, my husband, enjoy yourself. It's my late father's money. My uncles finally agreed to share it, and I got a large sum. I figured that since you worked so hard, you deserve to be treated like a king." Akodu blinked. Then his face broke into a smile. He picked up a large piece of meat, chewed it slowly, and moaned. "Ah! This is food. This is what food is supposed to taste like." "So you like good things like this?" Oibu asked sarcastically. "I thought your favorites were rotten yams." She was trying so hard to suppress the anger in her voice. "Ah, who doesn't like good things? My wife. You can cook, oh," he said excitedly, as he ate the food in a rush like it was going to disappear. From that day, Oibu became a different woman. She went to the tailor and sewed 20 different new clothes. She even got some for her husband. She bought oils for her skin, anklets and beads that jingled, perfume that smelled like heaven. She changed her hairstyle every week. Soon, you could not differentiate her from the queen of the village. Even with her pregnancy, Oibu was a sight to behold. The next thing, she renovated the leaking hut. Her child was not going to be born into poverty when he had a wealthy father. She built a very beautiful brick house. When Akodu asked how, she replied, "It's still the inheritance too. I inherited a lot of money." Akodu was excited. As long as it wasn't his money, he was happy to be living in wealth. Oibu started hosting visitors, offering them drinks and food. Children ran to her compound after school for groundnut and sweets. Women started calling her Madam Cash. She even bought a portable radio and danced in front of the hut with her husband every evening. Akodu became the happiest man in the village. "My wife is a gift from the gods," he told his friends at the bar. "Since she came into my life, she has been sweet, and my life has been sweeter. She came with so much blessing." But Oibu only smiled. She fed him, bathed him in praise, bought him new sandals and clothes, and made him feel like a king. Her mother was not left out. She sent her so many gift items, and Mama Oibu couldn't stop dancing when she received the gifts. All the while, the calabashes were emptying, slowly and steadily, and Akodu had no idea. Oibu had never tasted power like this. Not the kind that comes with shouting or throwing plates, but the quiet sweet power that came from watching her husband smile over a bowl of soup she had made with his own hidden money. They were living like royalty. Oibu even hired servants to help with house chores and keep the house clean. She never imagined that life could turn out to be this good for her. Joy became her new name, and her skin popped out with a different kind of glow. No one could understand what was going on. They felt that maybe Oibu had placed Akodu under his spell. Men at the bar were confused too. Akodu is smiling these days though. He even wears new clothes. His belly now housed roundness. one that shall never end. Everyone could admit that he was beginning to look like a human being, and Akodu was living in bliss. He walked through the village with pride, chest out like a cock, adjusting his cap every 2 steps. His skin was shinier, his mood brighter, his waist thicker. Look at me, he would boast to his age mates. I married beauty and blessing. She doesn't ask for anything, no. Her father's inheritance is what is feeding us. I didn't even know I needed joy until Oibu brought it. They would just watch him, shaking their head in disbelief. Akodu was not only stingy, he was a very shameless man. Back in the compound, Oibu was still busy. The old kitchen was demolished. In its place, she built a new modernized kitchen. She bought new cooking utensils, wooden shelves, and in no time, her kitchen was sparkling. Soon, Akodu's compound looked like a chief's palace. Children from neighboring houses would come to play in the yard. Villagers passed by just to stare. Some started calling her Lolo Oibu, the beauty queen of Amankwe. One day, the oldest elder in Amankwe walked up to Akodu and patted his back. "You did well, my son. A woman who brings peace and progress to your house is a blessing. You must keep her." Akodu beamed with pride. "Elder, I didn't know I could be this happy. She's my reward for all the yams I planted. I was even sad that I spent so much money marrying her, but look at how much luck she has brought my way." Deep inside, Oibu chuckled every time she heard praise. Every blessing they celebrated was built on the coins buried by the same man now dancing to her tune. She even began to give small gifts to neighbors. Kola nuts, groundnuts, extra yam slices. Akodu watched and smiled, thinking, this woman is so generous. She has changed my life. He no longer had to worry about his leaking roof whenever it rained. He no longer looked like a beggar, and every day he ate sumptuous meals like a king. But what he didn't know was that the hidden calabashes were no longer full. Each market trip chipped away at the fortune. And Oibu, she was careful. She didn't rush, she didn't splurge. She only spent just enough to keep the illusion of her inheritance alive. She knew Akodu would never suspect. He had never even looked inside his yamban except to check his stock. But trouble doesn't knock before entering. One early morning, as Akodu walked the backyard humming to himself, he had an itch to check and see if his money was still safely buried. He rarely checked, as he never spent money except during famine season. But this pull was strong. Akodu stepped into the small bush with a bounce in his step, still humming the praise song Oibu sang for him just the night before. The smell of fresh grass filled the air. After he had carefully looked around to be sure no one was watching, he dropped down and began to clear off the dried leaves. His heart was pounding in his chest, and he wondered why he was feeling so strange. As he dug, suddenly he blinked. His humming stopped. He dug deeper, but there was nothing. No calabash, no coins, no bundle of notes, just empty space and red earth. Akodu's eyes widened. He dropped lower to his knees and began to dig widely, his wrapper dragging in the dust. He tore through the soil with his bare hands, deeper, faster, panting like a bush dog. Nothing. Where is it? He whispered, looking around wildly as if the calabashes were playing hide and seek. He checked again, dug deeper, still nothing. Akodu let out a long agonizing wail that echoed through the entire village. "Hey! I am finished, oh! Amankwe come together, oh! All my years of suffering, everything, bah! My money is gone!" He ran outside barefoot and dusty, his wrapper almost falling off his waist. Thieves! I have been robbed! Oibu! Oibu was under the mango tree, calmly oiling her feet and humming a folk tune. When she saw her husband rushing towards her like a mad goat, she stood up immediately. "My husband, what is it? Akodo collapsed before her, panting like a chicken chased by hawks. The money, my calabashes, they are all gone. Oibu's eyes widened innocently. Calabashes? What calabashes? Which money? It was then it dawned on Akodo. He looked at her as if her head had grown horns. Don't play with me, woman. The calabashes I hid under the ground with all my savings. They are gone. Gone, I tell you. Oibu tilted her head, her voice calm. Are you saying you had money buried under the ground while we were drinking water and eating beetle-infested and rotten yams? Akodo blinked, stuttering. It's for investments, future plans. Oibu folded her arms. So, instead of feeding your family, you were feeding the sand. Where is it? What did you do with it? Akodo asked. She stared at him with a mix of pity and power. I didn't touch your money. I told you, I have been spending the inheritance my father left me. Akodo looked like someone had slapped him with a hot yam. That is a lie, Oibu. Where is my money? Oibu smiled sweetly. Was it? So, it was good when it was my inheritance. You see all the meat, all the good food, our new house, all the new clothes I bought. Everything was your money. I have no inheritance and we enjoyed it together. Akodo let out a very loud scream. You are so wicked, Akodo, Oibu continued. You had all that money and we were suffering. What if you died? What is the point of working so hard and looking like a beggar? You should be grateful that I didn't run away with it, but put it to good use. Just then, the villagers began to gather. News had spread quickly. Akodo was screaming, rolling on the floor, accusing his wife of witchcraft, money theft, and spiritual manipulation. Oibu has finished him. Ah, this one is sweet, the villagers murmured. The village men arrived, pushing through the crowd. Akodo, what is the matter? Akodo jumped up. I have been robbed. This woman, she has finished my fortune. My buried wealth, everything is gone. Oibu stood tall, dusting her wrapper. We enjoyed it together, oh. We enjoyed it. Tell them, Akodo. Tell them how you starved me and my unborn child. How we slept under a leaking roof while it rained. While you have money, buried in pots like it was palm kernels. Tell them how you screamed at me for asking for fish to cook. Fish! I did what I did because you have a very evil heart, Akodo. And everyone can testify that I helped you put it to good use. You are so stingy, so fear. The crowd gasped. People began to murmur, snapping their fingers in disgust. To fear what? As Akodo rolled on the floor crying like a baby, the women began to hail and sing Oibu's praises. The village elder stepped forward slowly, his staff tapping the ground. He looked at Akodo with narrowed eyes. You were rich but stingy. Now you are poor but better fed. Tell me, what have you truly lost? Why are you crying? Akodo opened his mouth but no words came out. The crowd roared with laughter. Akodo sat on the floor, dust covered, confused and humiliated. He has been outplayed by the very woman he had tried to impress with lies. The village of Amankwe had never witnessed drama like that. For weeks, people could not stop talking. Did you hear how Oibu dealt with him? She didn't steal, she upgraded the man. That's what you get when you hide money and starve your own family. But within the compound of the once proud Yam King, silence ruled. Akodo stopped going to the bar. He avoided the village square. He barely came out except to pee or scratch his head in confusion, because everywhere he went to, people mocked and laughed at him. His wrapper, once replaced by Oibu with soft, colorful fabric, now hung carelessly. His cheeks sagged from shame, not hunger. He had never felt so foolish in his life. But Oibu, she flourished. She took no joy in his suffering, but she also didn't apologize. Instead, she kept the house running. Food continued to appear on the table. The children from the village still came for their granuts, She still dressed well and laughed and still treated her husband like a husband, though now, with the cautious respect one might show a wounded goat. Slowly, very slowly, Akodu began to change. His life was now better than what it used to be. Oibu's words, "what if he died," never left his head, and that was true. He had never thought of it that way. He had grown up in abject poverty with his late mother, and it made him work so hard. But he became scared of becoming poor again that he refused to spend his money. One morning, he went to the market and returned with a large bushmeat. "My dear wife, please prepare this and let us enjoy." Oibu was surprised. She just chuckled and obeyed. As the days passed, Akodu was not just transforming into a better man, he was also becoming a better husband. One day, he visited the stream and helped his wife fetch water. The village girls giggled as he passed. "Akodu is in love." "No, Akodu has been humbled," they whispered. He also no longer begged for palm wine at the village joints. He now bought for himself and others. Then came the biggest surprise. Ozo had come to visit him. As he sat outside with Ozo, watching the moon rise over his newly built house. "I used to think saving money was everything," Akodu said softly. "But you can't bury joy in a calabash. And what's the point of yams if you can't eat them?" Ozo was surprised to hear that, but he nodded. "You've changed indeed, my friend." Akodu smiled faintly. "Oibu changed me. She made me taste life. Maybe I was meant to lose my treasure to gain something sweeter." And from then on, he began to live. And not just live, but give. He apologized to his ex-wives and started taking responsibility for his children, even though their mothers had remarried. He now offered palm wine to visitors. He gave out extra tubers of yam to people during harvest, and the smiles on their faces satisfied him. He repaired the village footpath that led to his farm. The people were shocked at first, then pleased. Many forgave him while others still teased him. But no one could deny it. Akodu was no longer Atika, the stingy rich man of Amankwe. He had become something new, something better. And Oibu, she was now living her dream. They have been blessed with a bouncing baby boy, and Akodu's joy knew no bound. One morning, as Oibu tied her wrap and prepared to go to the market, Akodu stopped her at the gate. He held her gently by the hand and said, "Thank you for spending what I was afraid to use. You built a home with my fears and made me a very happy man." Oibu smiled. "You're welcome. Just don't hide anything again, or next time, I will buy a car with it and run to the city." They both laughed, and from that day forward, though the yams remained his pride, Akodu never again valued his calabashes more than his comfort or his family. And so, the tale of the stingy yam farmer, who was outwitted by love, spread from Amankwe to Ama and beyond. Children sang songs about it, elders used it as a warning, and Oibu, she became a legend. Till today, if you walk past Akodu's compound in the evening, you will see him sitting on the porch, eating pounded yam with bushmeat and smiling, grateful that a woman once emptied his calabashes to fill his life. Hey besties, we've come to the end of this story, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it. Thank you so much for watching. I would love you to share your thoughts in the comments section. I appreciate you all for all your love, your support, your encouragement. Like, it's been massive, and it gives me strength not to give up even when I feel so worn out and tired. I want to say thank you so much, and I love you from the depth of my heart. If you're here to subscribe to this channel and you enjoy our stories, please do not skip this video without hitting the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so that you get notified whenever we post new stories. Right now, I have to go, and see you in the next story. Bye!